Corpus Christi is one of the most curious festivals in the Christian tradition, and perhaps because of its complexity, it is not celebrated by all religions. Traversing generations over thousands of years, its true origin and meaning remain unknown to many. In fact, the history of Corpus Christi is often distorted and misunderstood by many Christians who fail to grasp its true significance. However, from now on, we will uncover together what really happened. Without further ado, let's get to the video. The whole story begins in the year 1263. At that time, Europe was a mosaic of fervent beliefs and intense religious practices. In this setting was a priest named Peter from Prague, a city in northern Italy. This priest was undergoing a great crisis of faith, with doubts about the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist, a problem that deeply tormented his soul. Determined to find answers and strengthen his faith, the priest decided to make a pilgrimage to Rome, the Eternal City. In those times, many faithful made pilgrimages to the tombs of the apostles St. Peter and St. Paul in Rome, seeking an increase in faith and divine graces. Thus, Peter left Prague, crossing various regions on his spiritual journey. On the way, he decided to stop in the city of Bolsena. Bolsena was known for its devotion to Saint Christina, a virgin and martyr of the 3rd or 4th century. The city of Bolsena, with its large and beautiful lake, was a place of great faith and religious history. Saint Christina was called the Saint of Misfortunes due to the numerous attempts at martyrdom she endured because of her faith. Born into a pagan family, Saint Christina converted to Christianity at a young age, despite her parents' objections. Her devotion to the Christian faith aroused the anger of her own father, who held a prominent position in the city of Bolsena. Determined to make her renounce her faith, her father subjected her to a series of tortures and assassination attempts. However, according to tradition, all attempts to kill her failed due to miraculous interventions. Finally, he decided to tie a heavy stone to Christina's body and throw her into Lake Bolsena, believing that this would kill her. However, a miracle occurred. Instead of sinking, the stone to which Saint Christina was tied miraculously floated on the surface of the water, sustaining her and preventing her from drowning. If you are curious to know what happens next, I ask you to click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and continue watching the video. As the stone held Saint Christina afloat, protected by divine intervention, this surprising and miraculous event testified to God's protection of Saint Christina amid her hardships. Moreover, as Saint Christina floated on the stone, her footprints were marked on it, remaining to this day. These footprints became tangible evidence of the miracle that had occurred and a sacred relic for the faithful. The footprints have been preserved over the centuries as a symbol of Saint Christina's presence and the divine intervention that saved her from certain death. Saint Christina's footprints on the stone became an object of veneration and devotion for local Christians and pilgrims visiting Bolsena in search of healing, protection, and spiritual guidance. This miraculous event caused Christina's father to collapse and die upon witnessing the miracle. Although Christina survived, she continued to face several attempts at martyrdom, but was always saved by divine interventions until her death. Devotion to Saint Christina was intense in Bolsena, and many pilgrims visited her tomb seeking blessings. It was in this environment of religious fervor that priest Peter decided to celebrate a Mass, asking for Saint Christina's intercession to strengthen his faith in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. During the Mass celebrated by priest Peter in the city of Bolsena, something truly extraordinary happened. Peter, still struggling with his crisis of faith about the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, raised the consecrated host at the moment of consecration. It was then that the host began to bleed. Blood flowed from the host, staining his hands and the corporal, a square cloth placed on the altar. This unexpected and miraculous event surprised not only Peter, but also the faithful present, who witnessed the miracle with awe and reverence. Priest Peter, filled with a mixture of emotion, astonishment, and spiritual relief, could not continue the celebration of the Mass. He carefully placed the bleeding host on the corporal and, filled with tears of joy and renewed devotion, went to the sacristy. As he moved, drops of blood fell on the floor and the altar steps, leaving indelible marks that would be preserved as sacred relics. The news of the miracle quickly spread through the church, and other priests came to verify what had happened. All were impressed by the visible evidence of the miracle. The blood-stained corporal and the bloody stones. With a heart full of gratitude and still in a state of shock, Peter decided to take the blood-stained corporal and report the miracle directly to Pope Urban IV, who was in the nearby city of Orvieto. Upon reaching Orvieto, Peter recounted the events in detail to the Pope. The Pope, deeply moved by the account, recognized the miracle as a divine sign of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. He recalled the vision received by Saint Juliana of Liege, who had identified the need for a specific feast to celebrate the Eucharist. Here, it is worth opening a parenthesis to better explain this beautiful and curious story. Saint Juliana of Liege played a crucial role in the origin of the Corpus Christi feast. In the early 11th century, Juliana, a young nun of 16, began experiencing mystical visions revealing the need for a special celebration dedicated to the Eucharist. In one of these visions, she saw a bright white disk with a dark spot on one side. This image intrigued her deeply, and she spent many years in prayer seeking to understand its meaning. After a period of spiritual discernment, Juliana finally understood that the white disk represented the Church and its devotion to the Eucharist. However, the dark spot symbolized the absence of a specific feast that adequately honored the Blessed Sacrament. Although there was already the celebration of Holy Thursday, which commemorated the institution of the Eucharist, this feast was also associated with the sorrow of Christ's Passion. Juliana understood that Jesus desired a joyful and solemn feast dedicated exclusively to the glory of the Eucharist. Reluctant to divulge her visions, Juliana hesitated for 20 years until she finally found the courage to share her experience with a trusted priest named Jacques Pantalevin. He firmly believed in the authenticity of Juliana's visions and encouraged her to propagate her message. However, time passed, and Juliana eventually died, and her visions fell into oblivion. Years later, the priest Jacques Pantalevin, the only person privy to Juliana's visions, became the well-known Pope Urban IV. Upon hearing Priest Peter's account, Pope Urban IV was deeply moved and immediately recognized the importance of the miracle. With keen spiritual intuition and the remembrance of Saint Juliana of Liege's vision, which had foretold the need for a feast dedicated to the Eucharist, the Pope understood that this miracle was a divine sign. He decided to act swiftly to confirm the authenticity of the event and initiate the propagation of the miracle and the institution of a new liturgical feast. To verify the veracity of the miracle, Pope Urban IV convened a group of trusted theologians and specialists, including the renowned Saint Thomas Aquinas and Saint Bonaventure. These men, known for their wisdom and holiness, were sent to Bolsena to investigate the occurrence and examine the relics. Saint Thomas Aquinas and Saint Bonaventure, along with other theologians, conducted a thorough analysis of the evidence. They studied the blood-stained corporal, the bloody stones, and gathered testimonies from the faithful who witnessed the miracle. Once the authenticity of the miracle was verified, the group of theologians began organizing the return to Orvieto, bringing with them the precious relics, including the blood-stained corporal. The news of the miracle had already begun to spread, and as the group left Bolsena, many local faithful, moved and filled with reverence, started following them. This crowd grew as they advanced, with people from various nearby villages and towns joining the procession. As the group approached Orvieto, Pope Urban IV, informed of the successful verification and the approach of the miraculous relics, decided to go out to meet the procession. Accompanied by clerics and church dignitaries, the Pope dismounted from his ceremonial vehicle upon nearing the bridge where the theologians and the procession of faithful were approaching. When the procession reached the bridge, it was a moment of great solemnity and emotion. Pope Urban IV, dressed in his pontifical vestments, knelt in adoration of the Eucharist represented by the miraculous relics. He reverently received the blood-stained corporal and the consecrated host, and along with the procession, began walking toward the city of Orvieto. This event marked the first Eucharistic procession, which would become a central element in the celebration of Corpus Christi. Pope Urban IV, convinced by the theologian's verification and the spiritual depth of the event, decided to institute a solemn feast to honor the Eucharist. In 1264, he issued the bull Transiturus, decreeing the creation of the Feast of Corpus Christi. The bull emphasized the need to reaffirm faith in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, especially during a period when various heresies questioned this doctrine. The Pope saw the feast as a means to strengthen the faith of the faithful and promote Eucharistic devotion. He also highlighted the role of Eucharistic miracles like that of Bolsena as divine signs confirming the truth of Christ's real presence in the consecrated bread and wine. After decreeing the feast, Pope Urban IV took steps to ensure that the new celebration would be marked by a rich and profoundly spiritual liturgy. Understanding the importance of an appropriate rite that captured the essence and glory of the Eucharist, the Pope convened some of the most renowned theologians of his time to compose the hymns and prayers to be used in the solemnity. Among the theologians summoned were St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Bonaventure, both intellectual and spiritual giants of the 11th century. When the time came to reveal the hymns, all the theologians gathered in the presence of the Pope. St. Thomas Aquinas, known for his profound erudition and spirituality, was the first to present his composition. St. Thomas began reciting his hymn Lauda Sion, Praise Zion. This hymn, through richly elaborated verses, expresses belief in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist and the reverence due to this sacrament. St. Thomas's performance was so wonderful and inspiring that all the other theologians present remained silent, deeply touched by the perfection and spirituality of St. Thomas's words. With great humility and recognition of the superiority of St. Thomas's work, each of them tore up their own manuscripts, acknowledging that St. Thomas's hymn perfectly captured the spirit and purpose of the new feast. Thus, Lauda Sion became the official hymn of the Feast of Corpus Christi. This event not only highlighted St. Thomas Aquinas' extraordinary theological and poetic skill, but also underscored the unity and humility among the Church's greatest theologians as they recognized the most suitable work to glorify the Eucharist. The first celebration of the Feast of Corpus Christi, instituted by Pope Urban IV, marked a moment of profound devotion and joy in the Church. The festivity was carefully planned to emphasize the importance of the Eucharist and reinforce faith in the real presence of Christ in the Blessed Sacrament. The inaugural celebration of Corpus Christi featured a solemn Eucharistic procession, an event that would become a central tradition of the feast. During this procession, the Blessed Sacrament was carried through the streets in a monstrance, allowing the faithful to adore and honor the presence of Christ in the Eucharist. The city of Orvieto, where Pope Urban IV was temporarily residing, became the epicenter of this celebration. The significance of Orvieto in the history of Corpus Christi was highlighted by the construction of a magnificent cathedral designed to house and preserve the blood-stained corporal, the main relic of the Bolsena miracle. The Cathedral of Orvieto, known as the Duomo of Orvieto, began construction in 1290, a few years after the feast's institution. This cathedral is a masterpiece of Italian Gothic architecture, with its richly decorated facade and impressive interiors. Thus, the first celebration of Corpus Christi and the construction of the Orvieto Cathedral are interconnected events that established a lasting legacy of Eucharistic devotion, celebrating the Bolsena miracle and the vision of Saint Juliana of Liege. These events continue to inspire and strengthen the faith of many Christians, reaffirming the centrality of the Eucharist in the life of the Church and the spirituality of the faithful. It is worth noting that some religions may choose not to believe in or observe the Corpus Christi holiday for various reasons. Some have their own beliefs and religious practices that do not include the celebration of the Eucharist, or prefer not to venerate the host and wine as the body and blood of Christ. Additionally, there may be theological and interpretative differences regarding the nature of the Eucharist and what is written in the Bible. However, it is important to remember that regardless of religious differences, The core issue is to have faith in God and practice the principles of love, compassion, and mutual respect. Respect for religious diversity and the pursuit of peace and understanding among different traditions are values that transcend religious boundaries and are fundamental to building a more tolerant and inclusive world. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to the channel, click the bell to activate notifications, leave your like, and click on one of the 2 videos that will appear to continue watching us. Hugs, and stay with God.